obviously you want to make money. You want to make money, you want to reduce risk, you want to do all these things. You've got to tell me how you're going to get there.
Thanks so much for joining today. We have Mark Raffan joining us on our weekly show for the Neverending Climb for a stronger supply chain and procurement for those companies running SAP. Mark is the foremost expert in negotiation. He is one of the top coaches globally. He is one of the top podcasts globally for negotiations and runs the world's #1 mastermind for those looking to seriously level up their negotiations. Mark, thanks so much for joining. I'm hoping that we can share some of the things that you run into all the time with organizations in, procurement, supply chain, or in IT. Of what do you see as the biggest opportunities for those groups in negotiation?
Thank you, first of all, for having me, Sean. It's a great pleasure to be here, and thank you to the listeners and viewers for all of your time. I want to make sure this is as value added as I can make it. So, in terms of the #1 thing that I think everyone needs to improve on, it's going to sound glib and maybe obvious, but I think that the most obvious things are not always all that obvious, is first know what you want. Like the vast majority of people that I come in and see, before they see me, they say, well, Mark, I want a good deal. And I say, okay, cool. So does everyone. Everyone wants a good deal, but you have to define for me now what a good deal is for you. And they say, well, one that I make money. And I say, yeah, obviously you want to make money. You want to make money, you want to reduce risk, you want to do all these things. You've got to tell me how you're going to get there. So if you say to me, Mark, I want to make money, I want to save money, let's say I'm talking to a procurement team or a procurement person, a procurement leader, well, we want to generate more savings. We want to reduce risk. And I say, wonderful, on each individual agreement, how are you going to tell your team to do that? Well, what are the things that we could do, Mark? Well, obviously we could reduce price. Outside of price, what is the additional thing that we could do? We could maximize efficiency. We could improve cash flow. We could improve the contractor's effectiveness. We could improve the uptime of the software. We could do a bunch of different things that help us to generate more money, maybe reduce risk, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the biggest, in fact, the biggest thing that I want people to get clear on before they start doing anything in their negotiations is first get clear, what do I want to get out of this negotiation? What is my goal? What do I want to achieve? We call these aspirational goals at Negotiations Ninja. So what are the aspirational goals? And then what are the things that we're going to do to achieve those aspirational goals? How do we break them down into their component parts? It would be like saying to someone and having a conversation with someone about losing weight. And they say, well, my goal is to lose weight. And you say, yeah, okay, great. How are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to eat less. I'm going to get outside. I'm going to be healthier, etc. And you say, great. What are the things that you're going to do those things? And break it down and break it down and break it down until we get to the point where you take action and you actually have goals set up and you achieve those goals. So #1 thing, first things first figure out what it is you want.
What does good look like?
Exactly. You have to know what good looks like. If you don't know what good looks like, you won't be able to achieve good. Like the example I'll give you is an interesting conversation that I had with a procurement leader the other day. And they were a director in a large global team, and they said, Mark, I got a phenomenal deal. I said, cool. Prove it. And they said, what do you mean, prove it? I said, prove that you've gotten a good deal. I said, they said, well, I got savings and I reduced risk. I was like, and? Was it what you wanted to do? Was it the amount that you wanted to achieve? Was it the risk that you wanted to reduce? Are you exposed in areas that you didn't think about before going into it? And they're like, you know what, I didn't really think about that before I went into the negotiation. I was like, so you have no idea if you've gotten a good deal. You have no idea.
It's going on gut
Think
feel.
about what you want. Yeah, it's a terrible realization, right? When you get into it, you're like, oh, I actually don't know. But if you don't measure success, you'll never get success.
This is why pilots have a pre-flight checklist, right? This is why you don't try to take off in an airplane. Even if you do 12 flights a day, you run the pre-flight checklist 12 times because you'd never want to take off and then realize you have a flat tire.
Yeah.
Landing gets
Yeah.
real awkward.
Yeah. Oh, awkward is the minimum that it gets. It gets very dangerous. Yeah, I mean, there's a great book about this actually called The Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, which is a fantastic book. He's for those of you who haven't read the book, buy it. It's phenomenal. He's a World Health Organization doctor, and his job is to go reduce infection rates in developing nations in surgeries. And so what he comes up with is all of these ideas to be able to do it. But the biggest idea that he comes up with is, oh, these doctors aren't following checklists. They don't know what it is that they should be doing along the way in order to be successful. And you think to yourself, well, a doctor with 8+ years of post-secondary education who does this every single day, surely they will remember to wash their hands. No, because they're thinking of so many other things that they don't necessarily do that. And that's why we're so anal about the planning process. That's why we're so anal about getting together the right things that you need to do to be successful. First, figure out what you want, then everything else comes.
I love the simplicity of, like, there's an element of back to basics there, and there's an
Yes.
element of being clear on what you want, and then there's an element of what does good look like. And for our team, we refer to that as something that's D3, right? You want to make sure that outcome, that goal, is something that's described in detail and that it's documented and has that element of demonstrating what good looks like, so that you know if you've passed the test, if you should see a checklist for a lot of these things.
Yeah.
How many procurement teams have said we're moving all our vendors to 60-day terms or 90-day terms?
Right.
And myopically will go and move vendors to that point, even if that's not necessarily valuable overall. But this feels like the checklist with enough context for what good looks like. And if you're trying to negotiate something, if you're a procurement team looking to negotiate something with vendors, if you are a vendor looking to negotiate something with a customer, understanding what good looks like, so important. And being able to reference that. When I think about the journey that I've seen you take as you've grown and matured and built the number one negotiation destination, it's phenomenal, Mark. And even some of the quotes that you have behind you, right? These things, like, don't be afraid to give up the good for the great. Yeah. Right? These are some powerful statements, because sometimes in a negotiation we get hung up on this idea of this thing that we always used to have, always used to do it this way. And sometimes that really gets in the way of getting that better deal. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
I mean, these quotes are here for a reason. They are, number one, to tell you who I am, because in all measures of persuasion, if I can control your perception of who I am, I can better control the conversation. Number two, they're actually what I believe in. They're actually what I think is important. And so when a lot of people think about, to your point, when they think about giving up these average or lackluster practices or processes to achieve those things, there's a lot of fear there, right? And I get it, right? We've been doing the same thing for a really long time, and there's like this idea, this consistency bias that we're like, well, we keep doing the same thing because of a decision that's been made, and we keep reinvesting in that same idea over and over and over again. And what we're doing is, because we're reinvesting in that same idea, we're continuing to show commitment to that idea. And so we've got this social commitment that we've established within the team that says, oh, this is the way that we do it, and let's not change those things. And it is shocking to me how we continue to do those things in the face of the cost associated with doing those things, not only in terms of the money that's invested, but the amount of time that is wasted as a result. Let me give you a clear example. I used to work for, and I won't name names, but I used to work for a multi-billion-dollar organization not that long ago, within the last 10 years, that used to still process invoices manually. Now, I know that for a lot of people listening to this, that doesn't, on the surface, that statement may not be shocking. But when you're a multi-billion-dollar organization and people are mailing in invoices, we're receiving those invoices. A person is taking all of those out of the envelopes, putting them in intra-office mail, sending them to the correct person internally to manually stamp in intra-office mail for approval, then sending them back in intra-office mail to the person who now needs to code it into the system so that it can be paid, then it gets paid. It should blow your mind that that is happening. I mean, small $50,000 companies have figured out how to do this. And yet, these large multi-billion-dollar organizations are still stuck in this old process. And so when you think to yourself, like, well, why does this happen? Because it's the way that we've always done it. And it does sound shocking that this happens, but it does happen.
It totally happens. And then the next natural question is, oh, well, we need to digitize that. And so all of a sudden you get a digital version of the paper invoice that gets to the right person.
They haven't fixed the process.
They haven't fixed the process. They've just made it bad process.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Don't make the bad process. Go and rethink it. You know, there's another episode that is launching soon, talking about exactly that, of how getting back to basics, making sure that the basics work, making sure that they're done. There's a company that I was just speaking to the other week, won't name names, their payables group, instead of processing a credit on a vendor's account, they would ask the vendor to send them a check. They would receive the check. They would post that, and then they would send them back a check for the difference, instead of just crediting the vendor account and
my gosh,
processing a discounted payment together. It makes our hearts hurt when we think about how many people spent so long on this arcane process when there's a really simple way to do it that's this fast. But it's not necessarily the fault of the folks that are stuck doing it, because that's the way they've been trained, and they can really get stuck doing that way. So for companies running SAP, you could just create the credit memo on the account and then apply that, and then pay the total value due to that vendor on that amount.
Right.
And it's so simple, and yet sometimes nobody's taken the time to show these groups what good looks like and how they can give up, I guess, is good enough if you're marching checks around, because it works. But if you can give that up for something that's great, it's worth a little bit of change, and it's a bite-sized change that an organization can do. So these are beautiful, and sometimes this is where the negotiations are internal within the organization, right?
In fact, that's where the vast majority of the negotiations are.
Yeah.
And they're always the hardest, actually.
What have you seen when you think about your favorite story of an internal team overcoming something that they had a tough internal negotiation for?
Yeah.
What story comes to mind for you? Because this is sometimes one of those inspirational stories of, I am trying to make a difference inside my company. I want to be the leader. I'm on the Neverending Climb. I'm going to make a difference. I'm unlocking potential. And I need this other team to help me out. What's the top story that comes to mind for you, and how negotiation made that difference?
I think the biggest concern that I have, maybe I'll start there, is that people don't realize that the conversations and the projects internally are negotiations. We call them different things, right? We'll say, oh, we need to get alignment on a project. We need to negotiate that project and the direction and the things that need to be done. And we just give negotiation different names so we can avoid the idea that it's actually a negotiation. And we're going to
agree on scope.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a negotiation. Like, scope discussions are massive negotiations. And people, because we believe that, oh, this is someone that I work with closely, they're a friend of mine, I can just have a regular conversation and kind of just shoot from the hip without planning that, that's a massive mistake, because even if you did plan it, even if you knew what it is you wanted to achieve, you still haven't thought through what this person's intentions are, what their motivations are, what their ego is like tied into this idea, how they want to be seen, how they want to be praised, what kind of work's in it for them. All those kinds of things, when you think of the internal discussions, are really a really big deal, especially when you start to get into enterprise level negotiations with these large multi-billion dollar they're like large governments, right? The politics internally are substantial, and learning how to navigate those politics and the egos associated with those politics is really, really important if you want your negotiation or your project or whatever, call it whatever you want, to be successful. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be crisis mode. The easiest example I can give you of something that was successful is where a person that I was speaking to, a procurement leader that wanted to implement a new P2P software, was successful because they understood the person that they were going to get approval from. It was their CFO, and they understood what that CFO cared about logically, but also what impacted them emotionally. So, and this is not a new idea, this is an old idea. Aristotle came up with this thousands of years ago. He said, first think about logos, right? What's the logical reason someone would want to do something? But then also think about pathos. What's the emotional reason someone would do something? What this person found out is that, yes, there was logic. If we do this, then we get that. Cause and effect. But what they found out is this person wanted to be recognized as a leading CFO, sort of bleeding edge idea. They had these career progression ideas. And actually, the person that I was coaching was playing it safe. And they were saying, well, if we do these things, this is going to be the thing. It'll be the safe thing to do, because they thought that because the CFO was a CFO, quote unquote, that the CFO wanted to be safe. Not true. This CFO actually wanted to be recognized as a sort of leading, bleeding edge kind of CFO that did new things, that shook things up. So they changed their phrasing in the conversation to be like, look, if you want to be bleeding edge and you want to achieve all these things and you want to be recognized, and in fact, we're slated for these awards, we kind of got to do these things. And that really motivated the CFO to approve the project, because they recognized what this person actually emotionally wanted. They wanted praise and adulation and all those things that are really important to human beings, but especially important to this person. Without understanding that, that project would never have gone through.
Absolutely. The emotions make
Yes.
the difference. There was a supply chain leader and accounting leader, and they were working out some processes. And the accounting leader, they had finished, several years ago, moving everybody onto a better solution for receiving and organizing what they needed to pay their services vendors. And the procurement team was so frustrated because they were stuck on calls every morning trying to sift and sort through things that didn't add up, and sort through discrepancies and three-way matches that were failing.
Classic.
And the accountant was more of, from a pathos perspective, more of the typical accountant. Don't break it. Don't rock the boat. I don't like risk. I avoid risk. I avoid change. And the supply chain team, of course, is busy just trying to make sure that the business has what it needs to run. And they are facing vendors that are saying, I'm not delivering anything because you're not paying me for the last thing because it's stuck up in accounting. And accounting is saying, well, it didn't three-way match, so I'm not going to pay it. And this got to a bit of a loggerhead. And the only way that we came through this was getting a little bit of an independent party to go and say, hey, guys, here's something that I need. And here's what I need from both of you. And sometimes finding an independent third party inside the organization can really help you move past some of those challenges to get some people to say, yes, this can help. And I think sometimes the different tools and the way that we can influence things internally, understanding where the emotions are coming from. And if somebody's playing from a place of fear, it means that you need to help them feel safe before they can say yes. And I think that's a really common occurrence in the organizations that run large enterprise software. So
yeah, I agree.
This is beautiful. one of the things that intrigues me is in each of our lives, there's something that we need to level up on and something that we need to learn to get from where we are to where we're trying to be. Same thing we started the conversation with: understand what good looks like, understand the goals and where you're going. And for people that are really looking to level up on their negotiation capability, whether it's internally or with customers or with vendors or just maybe with your spouse, you
I
have
actually
a
did
mastermind
save a
group.
marriage this weekend.
Brilliant. Love it. Love it. Tell the folks a little bit about the mastermind that you've set up, because I think it's a beautiful thing. And I love the way that you're showing up to help people build this super, super important skill.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, the mastermind I'm really excited about, and it's going to be phenomenal. We're targeting a ton of different people, but primarily just executives and entrepreneurs that have achieved a certain level in their careers that want to get to the next level when it comes to persuasion, when it comes to influence, when it comes to negotiation, and even conflict resolution. If you were going to think about having a conversation with someone and then walking away from that conversation going, I could have handled that better, this is the mastermind for you. And we meet every single week, which is unusual for a mastermind because usually they only meet once a month or twice a month. We'll meet every single week, every Monday afternoon, to go through a new topic idea. So if you think of the broad base of communication, we're distilling that down to everything to do with persuasion and influence, negotiation, conflict resolution, networking, sales, communication that helps you to get projects through on the other side. Those are the things that we're going to be talking about it. And we've got entrepreneurs and executives from all walks of life, from all over the world, that are going to be participating. And you'll get a bunch of awesome swag and you'll get to network. But the key here that I want people to take away, the most important thing, and I think the thing that has the highest value for the vast majority of folks, is you get an incredible network with key entrepreneurs that are leading the way in what they do, whether it's restaurants or construction or IT or software, and you're going to get differing perspectives. So if you're going into this thinking, well, I've only got an IT background or I've only got a services background, not to worry. We've got people in manufacturing, we've got people in construction, we've got people in restaurants, we've got people in medical. And all of those folks have similar problems, but they're experiencing those problems differently. So they get to share their ideas on how they've approached those problems and solve problems with each other. And so the community that we're developing, I think, is going to be phenomenal.
Mark, this is a beautiful thing. What I love about this is the way that you have that niche, the niche inside a niche that's focused in on those people that love building the skill, love getting together. And I think we've all found that when we have a mastermind group that share the interest, share the passion, we can go and more effectively solve what we are working through than we ever possibly could on our own. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. It is an inspiration and a pleasure as always. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Sean. Great pleasure.